Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister S. Shankar held bilateral talks with their US counterparts Lloyd Austin and Anthony Blinken. Now, they reviewed the entire gamut of bilateral defence cooperation and the regional security situation, including the Indo-Pacific and the broader Indian Ocean region. We take a look at the 2+2 dialogue.
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Shankar held 2+2 ministerial dialogue in Washington with US Secretaries of State and Defence Lloyd Austin and Anthony Blinken.
Across the region, the People's Republic of China is attempting to challenge and undermine the sovereignty of its neighbors. Beijing is eroding the security of the Indo-Pacific region from its construction of dual-use infrastructure along your border to its unlawful claims in the South China Sea. And we will continue to stand alongside you as you defend your sovereign interests.
The meeting comes just hours after US President Joe Biden asked Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday during a virtual meeting not to accelerate the buying of Russian oil as the US and other nations try to cut off Moscow's energy income following the invasion of Ukraine. The meeting comes as the Indian import of Russian oil has become a source of tension with the US.
We look forward to further enhancing the depth and the scope of our defense cooperation to give effect to our shared vision of a free, open, inclusive, and a rules-bound Indo-Pacific and the Indian Ocean region. We are working with the US to develop capabilities across conventional and emerging defense domains. We have made good progress in a number of defense cooperation activities since the visit of Secretary Austin to India in March 2021.
The two defense ministers also discussed ways for closer collaboration between defense industries. Additionally, the four ministers also reviewed the entire gamut of bilateral defense cooperation and the regional security situation, including in the Indo-Pacific and broader Indian Ocean region. Ukraine and China were also among the main agendas of the meeting.
A significant focus of our engagement pertains to the Indo-Pacific. We have seen, particularly over the last year, both an elevation and an intensification of the Quad. Our achievements in this regard have a larger resonance. Today, we will be reviewing all these matters and more. We will also be discussing contemporary developments, including, obviously, Ukraine, also Afghanistan, the Gulf, and the Indian subcontinent.
US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin held an in-person meeting with Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, and US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken also met with Indian External Affairs Minister S. Shankar.
These 2+2 meetings have already played a key role in strengthening our bilateral relationship. This is the core whole-of-government dialogue in our strategic partnership framework. Today's discussions will build upon the previous productive meetings that we've had. This is a momentous moment in global affairs, and I think as a result, this partnership is even more consequential and more vital.
Meanwhile, the External Affairs Minister S. Shankar acknowledged the satisfactory extent of progress India and US have achieved over time. All four ministers then came together for the ministerial meeting with a focus on the Indo-Pacific as well as the war in Ukraine. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
India and the United States have released a joint statement on the 2+2 ministerial dialogue. The ministers reviewed mutual efforts to respond to the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine and assessed its broader implications. They have urged an immediate cessation of hostilities. Joining me on the broadcast is my colleague Shivani to give us more information on the statement by India and US on the 2+2 dialogue. Shivani, what more can you tell us?
Crispino, this is a press statement that has been now released after the 2+2 dialogue has successfully been completed between India and United States, where we saw the 4th annual dialogue that took place in Washington, D.C. between Dr. S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, and Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, and also Lloyd Austin and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. And there were a number of issues that were discussed in this 2+2 ministerial dialogue that lasted for over 4.5 hours. And after that, there was a joint statement also in which the crisis in Ukraine was also a major focal point, where both the countries have raised concerns on the humanitarian crisis, on the civilian deaths, and also the probe in Bucha, where we've seen how the brutal killings have taken place. Apart from that, we've also seen how the Secretary of State's clearly mentioned that India is not cutting, or it's not avoiding, or the sanctions are not being overseen by India, as it is collaborating with Russia for oil, because the quantity of these imports by India is quite less, and there have been talks about the defense and global issues, also how BECA, COMCASA are already being implemented, and a new space situational awareness agreement has also been signed this time between both the countries. So all this is quite important, and how both the countries are intending to help the people inside Ukraine during this humanitarian crisis. They've also called for the cessation of war. The war must end. There must be a fruitful dialogue. So there has been a successful 2+2 ministerial dialogue between both the ministers of both the countries, and they have agreed upon cooperation in defense as well as other sectors too.
Indeed, a successful 2+2 ministerial dialogue. Thank you, Shivani, for joining us this morning.